Hello, everyone. Oh, I see a lot of people already here. Holy crap! Okay, there's a lot of people in the chat. 48 viewers at the same time. I think this breaks a new record. Welcome everyone. Thanks for coming. Thanks for you know I don't know spending your Thursday evening with me. And I see some of the usuals here. Hey, Magic of Carols, Cheese Thief, Chirimbolo, also about Tolerance, Provian Andy, Jartov. Hey, how are you? How is everyone? We have oh, hello from Jeddah. Amazing. Thank you for being here. Hello. Today is a important day, so I'm excited to discuss this with you guys. Oh, hey, Razanov. We have first of all, we have a bunch of new followers. Um, I guess the news of today was a catalyst, but like we have MI IRL London 15, Anaba Salama, JNet KN, Cherry Blossom 330, Nastrip, Dana 93, Nail Bomb 89, Herculean Mover, CTRSS Lin, Odil Gurtip. There's a bunch of new followers, so thank you so much. Welcome to the community. I hope you find value in this space as old-time viewers. Oh, someone just did something. Rosova Tolerance. Oh, you just gifted a tier one subscription to Sauron. Thank you so much. And I saw that you're subscribing for 4 months. I think you're my oldest subscriber. Thank you so much for that. Um, oh, and another. Thanks for sharing the subscriptions, Rosova. I really appreciate that. Um, so yeah, as I was saying, there's a lot of interest for today, which means that we are at 63 average viewers. That's insane. Which means that we have actually achieved two of our follower goals. So we were gunning for 430 followers. We're now gunning for 470. So thank you. And then we have one more sub to go to meet our sub goal, and you know always always nice to meet the goals, so thank you for that. It really does help the channel. And I'm glad that we're growing as a community. Again, as I was saying, this space is meant for you guys to discuss international law. As it says in the title card, you can ask me anything you want about international law, although today probably we're going to talk about the topic down there, but the arrest warrants against Netanyahu, Gallant and Deif, I think it is, by the ICC. Um, Oh, hey, Iconoclast. I've been waiting for this stream for so long, so I'm so moved that it finally came. Yeah, we have been. Like, it's been a long time coming, right? We have been talking about these arrest warrants for quite a long time in this channel by now. So, it is the day we've been waiting for, and we are at 71 average viewers, and I think that's a new record. I think, like, this is amazing. Thank you so much for being here, guys, and thank you for sticking with me. You guys are those who are not subscribed are gonna go into an ad in the next 25 seconds, more or less. So I apologize for that. I will probably not say anything uh, unmissable while you're in your ad. If you don't like ads like me, you can always subscribe. That always helps. So yeah, thank you so much for being here. And let's just get into it. Oh, I think hit we just hit our subscriber goal. Hey, thank you so much. Average water drinker received a free subscription from Reservoir Tolerance. Um, and oh, hey, Ferko Maidana, thanks for following. Welcome to the community. So Reservoir Tolerance is in a subscriber gifting like parade today. Thank you so much. Hey, Wadara, how are you? Um, okay, so shall we start with our the ad is starting soon. So okay, let's set the stage for our conversation today. Okay. Um Chief Steve says that Rosoba Trans is a one-man capitalist army. Hey, I mean he's he's making the channel grow, so I am nothing but thankful. um Oh, and just a reminder, as I think Magic of Carols has already pinned in the chat. If you have a question, usually like the chat room ends up becoming a little bit like a debate amongst yourselves, which is great. I encourage you to do that, to talk amongst yourselves. But the chat ends up becoming a little bit chaotic. And so for me to see your questions, it's really helpful if you can use our channel emotes um, that are like, question marks, like little kids raising their hands, so that I know when I'm scrolling down the chat and I don't miss your questions. Okay. A199 Vit, thanks for following and welcome to the community. So please do that. Please use those as much as you can. Um, and if you're new to the channel, also let me know. It'll be amazing to like get to know you, and hopefully you stay with us in the community. Um, so I see that there's a lot of questions already in the chat. I will get to them, but I did want to set up the I guess the introduction to where we are right now with these arrest warrants. Okay, I do think um Average Water Drinker says that you can add me in the chat. Yeah, but it's just you can also do that, whichever works best for you. Um, so I think it's important to, and this is good because the ad people are coming back now. So welcome back if you were in an ad. We're just starting now. So I think it's important to frame what just happened at the ICC. Um, so let's not let's not pretend like this started with the request for arrest warrants. That's not the start of the history of Palestine's involvement with international law. Like when I was fresh out of law school, actually, like the early 2010s, um, that was the first time where that I saw that Palestine started directly engaging with international institutions to try and be included in them, like to use international law as a means for its own liberation. And that is something that at the time seemed like so distant, like in 2010. Like Palestine secured recognition by the countries of Latin America in 2011, 2012. It requested full membership in the UN in 2010, I think, and then in 2011 it received observer status in the UN. Then in 2015 it ratified the ICC Rome Statute, and slowly but steadily started incorporating itself into this player in the international community, taking advantage of the incredible people, incredible Palestinians that work for this effort of using international law for the liberation of Palestine. Let's frame it in that way, because we are right now. Palestinian excess Trudeau is speaking on the ICC arrest warrant right now. He's saying Canada will abide by all laws and regulations. So another thing that you guys can do is, if you have any links, any stuff that you would like me to react to, if it's not too long, of course, don't send me like an hour-long video. You can send them over in the chat, and I will like watch them with you, and we can react to them together. Um, but let's go back. So to this effort by Palestine to incorporate itself into the international community, to not be excluded by it as much as it used to be. Um, and oh, thanks, ex-Palestinian X. Hold on, let me make sure that you don't get the audio feed. Um, I am just adding it to the list. Okay, cool. Um, so let's think of this in terms of a broader shift in the way that international law has been working in like in the past couple of decades, where the global south is slowly starting to assert its position in international. It's not just Palestine that has been trying. It's states like South Africa presenting a case at the ICJ. It's Brazil being a major player in the Russia-Ukraine, you know, conflict, which was not normal for Latin America. Um, it's the BRICS, the rise of the BRICS. Um, there is a lot of effort from a specific side of the developing world that is trying to use international law as a means of exercising power. And I think it is important to recognize this. I think it is important to state this as the context in which Palestine inserted itself in the international community, leading to these arrest warrants. Um, and I'll get to your questions in a second. Okay, just let me wrap this short comment. And so when um, when we frame it like this, we see that there's a group of states out there that want to gain access to the international system on the basis of using the law to enforce obligations, as opposed to like using power to bend the rules, which has been the traditional way of doing things by great powers, both Western and non-Western alike. There are countries like, say, Russia that want to gain great power status to bend the rules, like the West bends the rules, and now is my time to bend the rules. That has not been the case with Palestine. That has not been the case with South Africa, with Brazil, and that is very important because this process of insertion into international law now has been achieved. Like with the issuance of these arrest warrants, the effort to be included sort of like is assumed. You have received this arrest warrant. Now the ball is not on Palestine's side, it's on the West side. And the West needs to decide what it's going to do with international law. Is it going to defend international law? Is it going to defend the legacy of the post World War II international order? Is it going to defend the legacy of Nuremberg? Is it going to defend international criminal law and criminal individual liability? Or is it just going to say, no, 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 this is not for me. This is for you guys, for you other people, you other states. And it's going to push its quote unquote rules based order, which is nothing more than defending global North interest at the expense of global South rights, bend the rules again in its favor, and pretend like that will have no consequences, as if this was 1992 and not 2024. And I think um, this is, as Francesco Albanese says, this is a very clear litmus test for international law and for the Western leadership and hegemony in the realm of international law. Will they be taken seriously from now on or not? That is what's at stake. So I did want to make sure that this is the framing that we have in it for our conversation, not as an isolated event, but as a part of a larger process of a almost as a international global South reclamation of international rules and the international system. It's almost like the subversion of the other to reclaim a position, a clear role in international law. Okay, so with that framework, we can start looking at the ICC arrest warrants. We can read them together. We can watch what Trudeau is saying. So let me go through your questions to see how many I can answer, because it's a lot of. I've never had so many people uh, at the same time in this channel. So thank you so much for being here. Oh hey, Boulevard of Streams, how are you? It's nice to see like the old school people, the people that are here like every weekend and every Thursday, mixed up with like so many other people here. Thank you so much for being here. So let me go back up the chat and see your questions. SV5679 says, what took them so long? I think this is a good place to start. I think one of the main things that the um, ICC had to do was make an airtight case. Same as the prosecutor. The prosecutor also took a long time to introduce its request for arrest warrants. And I think it was because they were aware that everything they did was going to be monitored by Israel and its allies, and so they had to make sure that they had an airtight case. Human right holder, welcome to the community. Um, so yeah, I think that's why it took so long. Judging now by a unanimous decision, I think what they were trying to do was to make sure that Israel couldn't say, "Oh, we filed objections and they were rejected outright." No, they took it. They took their time to read all the opinions and then produce an order, right? So let me see what questions you guys have. So Jartov says, which state parties to the Rome Statute do you think are least likely to comply with the arrest warrants? Like, is Germany party to the Rome Statute? Let me put you guys a map here of ICC member states. Hold on a second. Uh, okay, take this with a grain of salt because I'm getting it from Wikipedia. But so it might not be fully updated, but given the circumstances, it's here. So this is a map of the Wikipedia map for all ICC member states, right? Members of the Rome Statute. As you can see, most of Europe is a member. Canada is a member. Almost all of Latin America, um, and large parts of Africa and Australia, New Zealand, Japan, um, but not Israel, not Russia, not the United States. Um, and so I guess what you need to look at right now is green. If it's green, it's an ICC member. Okay, so which states will be least likely to comply with the arrest warrants of the member states? I think like the main problem right now would be the UK, Germany. Um, I don't know how France will react. Hungary, Italy, states that have governments that are pandering to conservative politics, and or um, this rallying to quote unquote Western values and principles as if Israel expressed them in its full extent, right? So um, that as from member states, that would be the bigger challenge. I've been tracking reactions right now, and I think like the Netherlands has already stated that they would comply with the order. Um, I think Ireland also said that they would comply with the order. Um, but oh, and Jordan has said that they will comply with the order. But I've seen some level of like hesitation from Germany and the UK so far. No official statement so far from them. But yeah, I think these countries that have like right-leaning governments, and I sadly I have to say Labour is sort of right-leaning, right, in the UK, might struggle to be clear about this. And again, this is them choosing the um rules-based order, quote unquote, their own self-interest over international law in a way that I think is going to break trust in the international system. It's gonna harm the West most of all. Um, Let me see who else has a question. Um, so just one person out there says, why is the U.S. in denial? How can the law fight against the U.S. interference? So this is a very interesting question because the United States is not a member of the ICC. In fact, the U.S. signed the Rome Statute but never ratified it, and then Bush, like George W. Bush, removed the U.S.'s signature from the treaty, which is something that you don't really do in international law. It was a weird move because there is one key obligation that states have when they sign a treaty, which is you cannot boycott the object and purpose of the treaty if you've signed it. But the U.S. wanted to specifically boycott the court so that it could sign treaties with states all over the world, particularly in the Middle East, that said that these states, even if they were members of the ICC, they would not be able to deport U.S. soldiers to the ICC. Right. So the U.S. wanted to boycott the court, so it removed its signature from the Rome Statute. Um, and we've seen before what the US can do, right? It sanctioned the court not that long ago under Trump, and it can have a very strong impact on the kind of like work that the court does, because of course, the US plays such an important big role in international politics. I think though that the way that the US is right now, it's almost like a crumbling empire. So I'm not so sure even if they manage to hurt the courts in the short term, I'm not sure that they would be able to afford the kind of wedge that this would cause with some of its, you know, European allies or even I would say Latin American allies, um, just like that, like with no consequence. Because what we're gonna see right now is Ireland, the Netherlands, probably Spain, um, just accept the ruling, and then other countries deny it, and that's going to fracture the West. And the West is already going to be fractured because of Trump. So I'm not sure that this weakening of the West is in the US's best interest. So while they will definitely do stuff, um, I'm not sure to what a degree they will go full out to destroy the court, as in like the Invade the Hague Act number 2, because the US has a law that says that if a US soldier is tried in the Hague, then the US can invade the Hague. Um, I'm not so sure they would go that full out. So I guess we'll wait and see. But yeah, it is a significant challenge coming up ahead for the court. Deepen 2000 says, "Did you think this day would come?" Yes, I did. I did think that they would come. I thought that it would take long, but particularly as of when the Judge Motok, the Romanian judge, left, um, it felt very weird. It was supposed to be a 2-1 decision because Judge Motok was like supposedly going to be the dissenting vote. When she left, I was like, okay, it's going to be a unanimous vote. So yeah, I did expect it. I just thought it would take much less than it actually took. Um, uh, Numi Gallup says, "Is there any law in Israel that Israel can use to take down Bibi?" I don't know. This is part of the debate of what happens when sitting presidents or sitting heads of government are indicted at the ICC. What is the message here? Is like when Bashar al-Assad, no, when Omar al-Bashir, sorry, was indicted by the ICC. The question was, what is the ICC saying? That there should be a coup in Sudan and Omar al-Bashir should be arrested through a coup? Is that the case? And like that is an open-ended question. I don't have an answer as to what exactly the state of Israel should do. Presumably, the state of Israel, under the control of Netanyahu, would not would not self-arrest, itself. But there is theoretically, if a new government comes in power, and Netanyahu's position is quite tenuous, if a new government comes in power, then yes, they should arrest Netanyahu and send him to the ICC. Um, then, yeah, Russell Tolerance says they can arrest him themselves and extradite him to the Hague. Yeah, unlikely, but yeah, theoretically. Just one person out there says, why is the US in denial? Oh, I already answered this one. Or Dara says, I know this won't change much right now, but I'm so happy the ICC has finally come out with the arrest warrant. This is truly historic, and it is historic. It is the first time that a Western leader has been indicted by the ICC, or an arrest warrant has been issued against a Western leader in the ICC. Right. So this is momentous, and it's important. Victories come few and spread out. So when they come, celebrate them. Right. Um. So Amir London 15 says, how likely is it that signatory countries will execute the arrest warrants? I already answered this one. Um, okay, Fercho Maidana says, would you say that the position against the ICC today resolution has any legal stand? I mean, it depends on what do you call by the position against the ICC's resolution. Like, the ICC has only issued arrest warrants. It's done nothing unlawful, and we're gonna look at the arrest warrants press release themselves here. I'm going to put them on the screen. We're going to read them together, and we're going to figure out what it means and what they say. Okay, so stick around, and we'll do that. Okay. Um, so Oadara says, do countries that continue to do business with Israel be violating the warrant because they are committing war crimes? I mean, it's not that direct. I think that countries that are supporting Israeli war crimes are violating international law at this point, because I think it is very clear that there's a serious risk that Israel violates international law. And so these are Jus Cogens violations, these are peremptory norms. You cannot support them. I think Germany is screwed at the ICJ. I think Nicaragua is going to beat its butt. Um, but it's not exactly because they're violating the warrant. It is because they are ignoring Israeli violations of international law and their internationally wrongful acts that they're not supposed to support, right? To facilitate, let's say. Um, Let me see what other questions. So average water drinker says, what are the consequences of the warrant? Is the suspect, if the suspect is not apprehended, can there be a trial in absentia? No, it can't. The ICC does not do in absentia. Resident says 99 viewers. Holy crap, this is insane. 100. Hey, we made it. 100. This is like unheard of. Like, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here. Um, okay, let me see. Let me see more questions, and then we can start reading the opinions. How about that? So what are the possible secondary, tertiary consequences of the decision? I mean, like I said, oh, thanks for gifting subscriptions, guys. I appreciate that. Jens has given a bunch of subscriptions. Um, Thank you so much. Oh, there's a hype train. Wow. Okay, cool. um, Thanks for the hype train, guys. Hopefully you can keep it up and keep them coming. Jens has given 5 subscriptions. Thank you so much. Um, I think what's gonna happen with the to answer JNEDGKN. Oh wow. Okay, more. Thank you so much for the subscription, guys. I appreciate it. I think that the I guess when you say secondary and tertiary subscription consequence, um, is this idea that it is virtually now impossible for the international community to say that Israel is not violating international law. Israel is violating international law, and it is important that um, the international community acknowledges that and stops supporting Israel's occupation of Palestine. Right? I think that's the most important secondary consequence. Um, so second question by JNHKN, what do you think is the decision? What do you what do you think this decision and what is happening will imply thinking about the next 5 to 10 years? I think we're oh hey J London 2025, thanks for following and welcome. I think in the next 5 to 10 years, what's gonna happen is um either we're going to live in a world where international law is collapsing because it's no longer respected, or we're going to live in a world where global south states have managed to actually implement international law in a much stronger way. I don't think I don't think the consequences of what is happening right now will impact only Palestine. I think they will impact the entire world. I think Palestine, as Francesca Albanese says, is a good litmus test for the validity of international law. So in the next 5 to 10 years, we will either see the world order created after World War II crumble or be strengthened. Either of the two. That's it. And thanks for being here. You say that it's your first time here. I appreciate you being here. Um. Oh, okay. More hype train. Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate that. Um. So let me see what other questions. Oh, thanks for the subscription gift, Rosova. Um, now that High Altitude Cherenkov says, now that BBA has an arrest warrant out, will you press for one to be issued against Paddington? Yeah, Peru needs to deal with Paddington, not the ICC, my friend. um, Iconoclast says France confirmed it will abide by the request and it extended its support to the ICC. That's amazing. Um, so Chirimbolo says, do you ever see the U.S. applying its Hague Invasion Act? No, I think it's bravado. Um, So Donna93 says, "Oh, thanks for cheering, Magic of Carols. I know you like seeing Kevin the Unidog, the channel mascot, spit a unicorn, rainbow. So there you go." Dana93, first time chatting, so welcome. Says, "Thank you for holding the stream. Maybe it is slightly tangential, but doesn't the war goal of destroying Hamas imply the extermination of the Palestinians in Gaza? They are a resistance movement deeply embedded in the Palestinian national consciousness." Um, okay, so." as to extermination, which was a specific crime, um, let's then oh, thanks for cheering again, Magic of Carls. Let's look at the arrest warrants, read them together, and then we will see how that works. Okay, put a pin on that for a second. Um, so in practical terms, says Muhanusi, what do these arrest warrants mean? It means that Netanyahu cannot travel in any of the green areas of the map. Thanks for cheering, Jens. Um, So I don't think there will be any arrests soon. No, I don't think that either. I don't think that Netanyahu will be arrested tomorrow or anything like that. But his life has become a lot more complicated. Um, J. Morales V says Argentina is playing a sad role. Well, yeah, to be expected, right? Um, so let me see who else. Human rights holder says, I've been a follower of yours on Twitter for a while, and it's great to join your Twitch stream. Amazing, welcome. I would love to hear your thoughts on the fact that extermination charges were confirmed as against Deif, but not Netanyahu. We will get to that. Do not worry. I'm definitely talking about that. Um, A199Vit says, according to Politico, Italian foreign minister said Italy supports the ICC, but that it must play a legal role and not a political role, adding Rome was mulling how to interpret the ruling. See, this is a silly thing because, like, I would say that the law is inherently political, but like let's not get into that debate right now. um, because there's nothing political about that decision. It is the most technical and boring press release you will ever read in your lives. I'm worried that you guys are gonna get bored just reading it. Like I have 100 people watching this, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm gonna bore 100 people. But we'll get to that, and you'll see that there's nothing political about this. It's a very technical opinion. Um, Okay, I'm never gonna end if I keep on reading every single question. I'm sorry if I haven't answered your question. If you think it's a really awesome question, put it again in a bit. Let me just start reading the arrest warrants with you so that we can analyze it as of in the terms of international law. How about that? Let me put that in the screen. Hold on, give me a second. Like it's amazing to me that I know how to do this as a lawyer. I'm not really good with technology. Uh, okay, this should be it. Yes. So I think you guys can read this, but if you can't, let me know and I'll try to make it bigger. I don't know if the text is big enough for you guys. Let me see. Let me see the screen. I think you can read it, but let me know if I need to make this bigger. Hold on, maybe I can do this. Did that work? Okay. Oh, you have an ad coming in 1 minute. It's okay. We will take precautions. Bigger. Okay, let me see if I can make this bigger. Uh, is that better? Oh, we got an extra emote thanks to your hype train, guys. Thank you for getting me to a 43% level 3 hype train. Is that better? Can you guys read that? Much better. Okay, awesome. So let's start, okay? So I'm not a procedural lawyer, okay? So all of the Article 19, Article 18, whether Israel is in, you know, conducting a proper investigation, I'm not gonna focus on because of the simple fact that that's not my area of expertise. This is something that I always tell the people in this channel that I am I'm never going to tell you that I am an expert on everything. I am not. Okay. So the content of what I can share with you varies based on that expertise. So I'm not going to pretend that I'm an expert in procedural law at the ICC. So let's look at the meat of it all. Let's look at the war crimes that have been um, you know, um, I mean, detected by the court. There you go. So this decision is on request by the state of Israel. I'm gonna skip because this is all about procedure. Okay. Um, Here you go. So it says here, warrants of arrest. The chamber issued warrants of arrest for two individuals, Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu and Mr. Yoav Gallant, for crimes against humanity and war crimes committed at least 8 of October, from at least 8 October 2023 until at least 20 May 2024. And this date will be important coming up. Okay, remember this date, 20 May 2024, the day the prosecution filed the applications for warrants of arrest. Because this is the extent of the time of the temporal framework of the court, of the pretrial chamber. Right? It did not go beyond that. So whatever happened by May, that's it. That's all that the court analyzed. Okay. Um, so, for example, the current siege in northern Gaza is not covered by this um, arrest warrant. Okay. So it says again, the arrest warrants are classified as secret in order to protect witnesses and safeguard the conduct of the investigations. So this is an important point here. We are not reading. Oh, great, you're back. So what I was saying is we are not reading the arrest warrants themselves. We are reading the press release by the court on the arrest warrants. Okay, so the order itself we're not seeing. Um, It says at the outset, I'm here. The chamber considered that the alleged conduct of Mr. Netanyahu and Mr. Gallant falls within the jurisdiction of the court. The chamber recalled that in a previous composition, it already decided that the court's jurisdiction in the situation extended to Gaza and the West Bank, including East Jerusalem. Furthermore, the chamber declined to use its discretionary propriemotor powers to determine the admissibility of the two cases at this stage. This is without prejudice to any determination as to the jurisdiction and admissibility of the cases at a later stage. So basically, this is saying the court already said that it has jurisdiction over Palestine. So we're not going to go into that right now. It doesn't mean that Israel will not be able to like file this claim later on. So bear that in mind. Okay. A199 Vit says Austrian Foreign Minister ICC decision to issue arrest warrants for Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant is utterly incomprehensible. International law is non-negotiable and applies everywhere at all times, but this decision is a disservice to the court's credibility. I mean, it's not, right? It's not a disservice to the court's credibility. On the contrary, it was being threatened with sanctions by the U.S. It says a lot of the court that it actually did this either way. But okay, back to the opinion, back to the arrest warrants. Essentially, what this means is that at a later stage, yes, Israel can challenge the jurisdiction of the court. So it's not over yet, basically. Right. With regards to the crimes, the chamber found reasonable grounds to believe that Mr. Netanyahu, born in 1949, Prime Minister of Israel at the time of the relevant conduct, and Mr. Gallant, blah, 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 each bear criminal responsibility for the following crimes as co-perpetrators for committing the acts jointly with others. The war crime of starvation as a method of warfare, and the crimes against humanity of murder, persecution, and other inhumane acts. What does this mean? Okay, what is a war crime and what is a crime against humanity? Okay, a war crime is a violation of the laws of war. It's what happens when um, you violate international humanitarian law in the course of a war, right? So when two armed forces are engaged in an international or a non-international armed conflict, and one of those parties attacks a civilian or a protected person or a hospital, that is a war crime. A crime against humanity is different in that it does not need to happen in wartime only. Um, a a crime against humanity is defined as a systematic and or generalized attack against a civilian population as part of an organizational policy. In other words, it's something that you do so many times in such a systematic framework, like always in the same way or in such a generalized fashion, like in such a large area, that it's not a normal crime. So when a person kills another person, they commit murder. But when a person goes town to town killing every single person that they see, that is a crime against humanity. Oh, Changebox, thanks for gifting. Oh wow, 22 gifts subscriptions, Changebox. This is amazing. Thank you so much for gifting a subscription to Magic of Carols. You are going for Resovatoran's title here. um, can't believe you've gifted 22 subscriptions so far. Thank you so much. Um, so okay, so that's a crime against humanity. Okay, a normal crime committed in a systematic fashion becomes a crime against humanity. Okay, it doesn't matter if you committed during war or not. So bear that in mind as we go forward, because what's happened here is that Israel's conduct has triggered one war crime, starvation as a method of warfare, and three types of crimes against humanity: murder, persecution, and others. Um, Rosova Tolerance is saying, nope, you're going to keep your title, and is now at top at 24. um, so the chamber also found reasonable grounds to believe that Mr. Netanyahu and Mr. Gallant each bear criminal responsibility as civilian superiors for the war crime of intentionally directing an attack against the civilian population. This part matters because this is a key argument that Israel has made throughout this entire conflict, uh, that it is not directly attacking the civilian population, that it is trying to target Hamas, and as a result of targeting Hamas, people die because Hamas uses human shields. Right? This is the ICC saying, I I don't believe you. I have reasonable grounds to not believe you. And that is relevant because like reasonable grounds is not, remember, this is not an indictment. Like this is not a sentence. The standard here is not quote unquote beyond reasonable doubts. The standard here is relatively low, the evidentiary standard. It is reasonable grounds to believe. So there's a lot of room to say, oh, this is not the end of the discussion. But at the very least, there's reasonable ground that Israel is directly attacking a civilian population. That in itself is a huge loss for Israel because they have been saying for so long that that's exactly not what they're doing. All of this, like one-to-one ratio conversations, all of these like military experts that say that Israel is fighting the most humane war ever in history, they are not really looking good right now because of this paragraph. Um, so, oh hey, Cassini returns. Thanks for following and welcome to the community. Um, so let's go into the alleged crimes, shall we? Let's go into what is what is it that the chamber says that it has reasonable grounds to believe that Netanyahu and Gallant are doing. So it says the chamber found reasonable grounds. Again, this is the evidentiary standard. Okay, it's not beyond um, any reasonable doubt, which is the standard for prosecuting someone or for sentencing someone. This is just to move forward with the arrest warrants. Okay. Um, the chamber found reasonable grounds to believe that during the relevant time, international humanitarian law related to international armed conflict between Israel and Palestine applied. This is one of the things that Cassini Return says that J&A recommended me. J&A is Jen and Leona. They have a Twitch channel because they are actresses in the video game Baldur's Gate, which I love. So it's always great to see people from the J&A channel coming here. So this thing here, the chamber found reasonable grounds to believe that during the relevant time, international humanitarian law related to international armed conflict between Israel and Palestine applied, is important because you can have um, an international armed conflict whenever there's a conflict between two states, right? Under international law, you can also say that there's an international conflict when there's a situation of occupation. So most people say the Israel-Palestine conflict is an international armed conflict because it is an occupation, and that's it. That's not necessarily what the chamber is saying here. Says the chamber found reasonable grounds to believe that during the relevant time, IHL related to international conflict between Israel and Palestine applied. This is because they are two high contracting parties to the 1949 Geneva Conventions and because Israel occupies at least parts of Palestine. So it is not saying that there's an international conflict because there's an occupation and it doesn't matter whatever Palestine is. It is saying because Palestine is a high contracting party of the 1949 Geneva Conventions. And so theoretically, at least for the purposes of the Geneva Conventions, what the chamber is saying is that Palestine is a state. Right, so of course, this is not the final determination. This does not mean that Israel will not try and challenge this going forward, but it sort of hints at in that direction, right? If Palestine is a high contracting party, then it is a state, right? So this is a significant thing that is usually being left out. So it says that the chamber also found that the law related to non-international armed conflicts applied to the fighting between Israel and Hamas. So this is an interesting framing because this is something that the prosecutor um, mentioned in its request for arrest warrants. Under international humanitarian law, it is not necessarily clear how to qualify the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. To some, it is only an occupation, and Hamas is a non-state armed group fighting for Palestine, even if it is not the state of Palestine. So it would be a militia part of the efforts to liberate Palestine. And so there's only an international armed conflict involved. For the prosecutor and now for the chamber, that's not the case. What they're saying here is that there's two different conflicts at play. On the one hand, there's a conflict between Palestine and Israel as high contracting parties of the Geneva Conventions, as two states that are in international armed conflict. And then separately, within that occupation, there is a non-international armed conflict between um, Hamas and Israel. This is relevant because different war crimes apply in different types of conflict. So this would have been a strategic decision by the prosecutor to frame the conflict this way to secure the largest amount possible of convictions. And this is something that the pretrial chamber is not questioning. So victory for the prosecutor. Okay, another thing that might be left out um, in most summaries of this opinion. Let's see. I can skip this. The chamber found that the alleged conduct of Netanyahu and Gallant concerned the activities of Israeli government bodies and the armed forces against the civilian population in Palestine, more specifically civilians in Gaza. It therefore concerned the relationship between two parties to an international armed conflict, as well as the relationship between an occupying power and the population in occupied territory. For these reasons, with regards to war crimes, the chamber found it appropriate to issue the arrest warrants pursuant to the law of international armed conflicts. The chamber also found that the alleged crimes against humanity were part of a widespread and systematic attack against the civilian population of Gaza. So what the court is saying is the war crimes that are being committed here are being committed against Palestine as part of the occupation of Palestine in an international armed conflict, right? Not in the isolated fight between Hamas and Israel, but as part of a broader international armed conflict. Again, this is if you're Palestine, you're reading this and you're going, "Oh, I like this." Right? This is all stuff that is very good for Palestine as from a strategic point of view. Um, so the chamber considered that there are reasonable grounds to believe that both individuals intentionally and knowingly deprived the civilian population of Gaza of objects indispensable to their survival, including food, water, and medicine and medical supplies, as well as fuel and electricity from at least 8 October 2023 to 20 May 2024. This finding is based on the role of Netanyahu and Gallant in impeding humanitarian aid in violation of international humanitarian law and their failure to facilitate relief by all means at its disposal. This section here is very important because this is an international body, the chamber of the pretrial court of the ICC, saying that Israel violated the ICJ provisional orders of January and March, right? Because the ICJ told Israel to not impede humanitarian aid. And the ICC is saying, look, I have reasonable grounds to believe that Israel is impeding humanitarian aid. So again, if you are South Africa reading this, you go like, oh, this works to my favor. Awesome. There's a very legitimate body saying that there's reasonable grounds that I am right and Israel is wrong. Marmsey says, do you think this is promising for the ICJ's determination on genocide? I will get to that. Bear with me because I want to build on the argument so that you can see how it impacts it, because it definitely does. There's a very clear connection between these arrest warrants and the genocide case. So we'll get to it. Don't worry. Hold on. Let me continue reading. So the chamber found that their conduct led to the disruption of the ability of humanitarian organizations to provide food and other essential goods to the population in Gaza. The aforementioned restrictions, together with the cutting of electricity and reducing the fuel supply, also had a severe impact on the availability of water. So here, this is also very damning for Israel, because the chamber is saying that whenever Israel increased humanitarian aid, it did not do so, quote, to fulfill Israel's obligations under international humanitarian law or to ensure that the civilian population in Gaza would be adequately supplied with goods in need. No, it wasn't selfless. It wasn't to comply with the law. They were a response to the pressure of the international community or request by the US of A. So this is like very strong indication that as far as the ICC is concerned, Israel is not complying with the orders for from the ICJ. Right. This is in itself huge. Sorry, I have people messaging me. Um, Furthermore, the chamber found reasonable grounds to believe that no clear military need or other justification under international humanitarian law could be identified for the restrictions placed on access for humanitarian relief operations. This is also huge. I don't know if you guys read Francesca Albanese's reports on what's going on in Gaza, but Francesca Albanese argues that what Israel is doing in Gaza is doing quote unquote um, humanitarian camouflage, um, meaning that it is using international humanitarian law, the law of war, as a means to perverse its content and weaponize it in the service of its genocide. That's her argument. That when it says that Hamas is using human shields, it is not saying and therefore I need to protect them. It is saying and therefore I can just kill anyone. Right? Can I link to her reports? Yes, I can. Hold on. Um, Let me hold on. I have them saved. So give me 1 second. I'll give you the links. Let me see. So I can put it in the screen actually. That will be better. So the first link is called Anatomy of a Genocide. And I'm going to put it on the screen right now so you guys see. Uh, I think here, right? So this is Francesco Albanese's first report, Anatomy of a Genocide. So it is important to compare this phrase here, that there's no clear military need or other justification under international humanitarian law, with this part of her report. Hold on. Let me get to it. There, here you go. Humanitarian camouflage, distorting the laws of war to conceal genocidal intent. Right? French. I don't think you can read this. It's probably too small for you guys. Hold on. No, this is too big for me. Okay. I think this would probably be better. Hold on. Let me see how it looks for you guys. I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger, just so you guys can read. Mm, there you go. Can you read that there? I think you can read that there. Is that better? Wait, I think I can make it a little bit bigger. No. Hold on. Okay, that should work. Okay, now it's huge. Like in my screen, it's taking up all my screen. Um, so what the report says is a core feature, I'm reading here, a core feature of Israel's conduct since 7th of October has been the intensification of its decivilianization of Palestinians as a protected group under the convention. Israel has used IHL terminology to justify its systematic use of lethal violence against Palestinian civilians as a group and the extensive destruction of life sustaining infrastructure. Israel has done this by deploying IHL concepts such as human shields, collateral damage, safe zones, evacuations, and medical protection in such a permissive manner so as to gut these concepts of their normative content, subverting their protective purpose, and ultimately eroding the distinction between civilians and combatants in Israeli actions in Gaza. So, official statements have translated into military conduct that repudiates the very notion of civilian protection. Israel has radically altered the balance struck by IHL between civilian protection and military necessity, as well as the customary rules of distinction, proportionality, and precaution. This has obscured the cardinal tenet of IHL, indiscriminate attacks, which which do not distinguish military targets from protected persons and objects, cannot be proportionate and are always unlawful. So that's what Francesca Albanese is saying, right? Now read this again. Now read it again. Furthermore, the Chamber found reasonable grounds to believe that no clear military need or other justification under international humanitarian law could be identified for the restrictions placed on access for humanitarian relief operations. Isn't that sort of the same? Saying there's no justification under international humanitarian law for what you are doing. Sorry, someone is doing this. Seth98 says, "How likely is is for the ICC to go after Israel's Western enablers next? It is obvious that it is a big reason they are against this, but how likely is it to come to fruition at the moment?" I don't think that the ICC. I think the next step for the ICC prosecutor is to enlarge its own request for arrest warrants and go after like other crimes, like genocide or like settlements. And I think the ICC prosecutor has recently just said that in a statement here. This is the statement by the ICC prosecutor Karim Khan. He said that he's looking into um, Gaza, the West Bank, and East Jerusalem as its next step. So I don't think that the ICC uh, would go after Western states. I think that's more for like domestic prosecution at this point, other than expanding. Instead, it will expand its own request for arrest warrants. Um, okay, hold on. Where was I? Okay, so let's continue reading, right? Um, Despite warnings and appeals made by the UN, the Security Council, the Secretary General, states and governmental and civil organizations about the humanitarian situation in Gaza, only minimal humanitarian assistance was authorized. The chamber considered the prolonged period of deprivation and Mr. Netanyahu's statement connecting the halt in the essential goods and humanitarian aid with the goals of the war. So, this is something that South Africa says at the ICJ. It says the supposed humanitarian protections that Israel is enabling in Gaza are part of the genocide. They know that aid is insufficient and they're still doing it. So again, you're reading this as either a Palestinian or a South African lawyer, and you go like, "Hey, I like this. This is speaking my language." The chamber therefore found reasonable grounds to believe that Mr. Netanyahu and Mr. Gallant bear criminal responsibility for the war crime of starvation as a method of warfare. This is a horrendous war crime. Let's be clear. Like starving civilians as a means of winning a war is a horrendous thing to do. There's a really good expert on international law called Ton Dannenbaum, who is an expert in starvation as a method of war. Um, I think I can find his articles and share in the chat for you guys to read. Hold on. I'm going to send you a link so that you guys can read this. So, Tom Dannenbaum is, he teaches at, I think, Tufts, if I'm not mistaken. And he wrote this article in October 11, 2023, talking about the starvation as a war crime. I'm going to put it in the chat if you guys want to read it. It'll be here. If you guys want to join the Discord server that we have, I usually put these links on the recommended reading section of our Discord server. You can find the link, the invite link in my profile on Twitch, and you can just, find a lot of interesting stuff to read. The fun doesn't stop when I stop streaming. Um, so let's go on, okay? Wait, I think I missed the question. So So Solar Defect says the Rome Statute, which we are signed up to in the UK, would also apply to people like journalists, and the Genocide Convention, right? The Genocide Convention bans incitement to genocide, so that would apply to like journalists. Where were we? Okay, so the chamber found that there are reasonable grounds to believe that the lack of food, water, electricity, and fuel and specific medical supplies created conditions of life calculated to bring about the destruction of part of the civilian population in Gaza, which resulted in the death of civilians, including children, due to malnutrition and dehydration. This is key. I think this is the most important part here. You might recognize this text. You might recognize the language being used here. Because let me put it here for you guys. Compare that text to this. Article 2 of the Genocide Convention. In the present convention, genocide means any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group as such, deliberately inflicted on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. It's the same language. Conditions of life calculated to bring about the destruction of part of the civilian population in Gaza. It's the same language, right? So I actually don't know if you can read this. Maybe it's too small for you guys, but I think it's too small for you guys. But let me fix that for a second. Uh, there. Deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. Why is the language the same? Right? That is a big question. Someone asked me this. Because the ICC prosecutor said that one of the crimes against humanity that it considered Netanyahu and Gallant to be committing was the crime against humanity of extermination, which shares a lot with genocide, even by the name itself. The main difference between the crime against humanity of extermination and genocide is that the crime against humanity does not include this special intent to destroy, and also needs to comply with the requirements of a crime against humanity, which, remember, I told you was a systematic and generalized attack against the civilian population as part of an organizational policy. Right? Whereas genocide does not need to comply with that, it does need to comply with the specific protected group being national, ethnical, racial, or religious, and uh, having an intent to destroy the group as such. Right? But the act itself doesn't change in either of them, right? Or it's very similar at least. The act itself of genocide can be any of these five um, sets of acts. One of them being that deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction, which is the same as for the crime of extermination. So if you see here in the Rome Statute, Article 7 of the Rome Statute, let me make this bigger so you guys can read it. I hope this is big enough for you guys. Article 7 of the Rome Statute says, for the purposes of this statute, crimes against humanity means any of the following acts when committed as part of a widespread or systematic attack directed against the civilian population with knowledge of the attack. B. Extermination. So when you exterminate people as part of this like widespread and systematic attack, you commit the crime against humanity of extermination, not necessarily genocide. So what is the difference? There's another document, and I know I'm giving you like a crash course on international criminal law here, but I mean, I do what I can. Um, this is known as the elements of the crime. It goes into a little bit more detail about what you need to fulfill to qualify specific action as a crime at the Rome Statute, at the ICC. This is part of the ICC, right? So let me enlarge this. So for the crime against humanity of extermination, Article 7.1b, you need to fulfill all of these elements. The perpetrator killed one or more persons, including by inflicting conditions of life calculated to bring about the destruction of part of the population. The conduct constituted or took place as part of a mass killing of members of a civilian population. The conduct was committed as part of a widespread or systematic attack directed against the civilian population, and the perpetrator knew that the conduct was part of or intended the conduct to be part of a widespread or systematic attack directed at the civilian population. So these two go at the is this a crime against humanity component of the crime against humanity of extermination. These two go as to is the conduct extermination. That conduct is similar to the actus reus of genocide, right? So, which is here, this one, Article 2C, right? So, what does the ICC say when it deals with the crime against humanity of extermination. It says the chamber found that there are reasonable grounds to believe that the lack of food, water, electricity, etc., created conditions of life calculated to bring about the destruction in part of the civilian population in Gaza. So what the court is saying is this, this here, this is met. Check. Right? We comply with that one. Right? So okay, so that is met, which resulted in the death of civilians, including children, due to malnutrition and dehydration. So it led to the death of children. So one or more persons were killed. Right. So this is checked. This according to the court, there's reasonable grounds that this actually happened. I just realized that you guys are in an ad break, so I'm gonna go slowly so that you guys can catch up. Okay. I should have snoozed that one. Sorry, my bad. Okay. So if you go to the elements of the crimes, let me go back to. You can see then that Article 7, 1b, crime against humanity of extermination, requires you to prove 4 items. What the ICC is saying here is that the first item, this one, was met, right? It's also telling you that the result was that people died. So this was met, right? So let's continue reading along. Oh, Chomnomsky says, for some reason I never had an ad break. Well, that's good. It's good that you don't have ad breaks. I'm glad you don't. um, you guys are back, so now I can explain again. Oh yeah. If you're subscribed, you don't get ad breaks. So subscribe. So let me say this again for the people who were in the ad break. Okay, so the chamber, the ICC, is saying that it found reason to believe, like reasonable grounds to believe, that Israel created conditions of life calculated to bring about the destruction of part of the population, the civilian population in Gaza, and this led to civilian deaths. So when you go to the elements of the crime of extermination, you can see here that what the court is saying is this we found, check, this we got, right? And then the court goes on to say, on the basis of the material presented by the prosecution covering the period until 20 May 2024, the chamber could not determine that all the elements of the crime against humanity of extermination were met. So it's saying, I'm not convinced that all of these 4 were met. But the court is telling you that this one, in its opinion, was met. Right? So the chamber did find that there are reasonable grounds to believe that the crime against humanity of murder was committed in relation to these victims. So what the court is saying is, I am not convinced that all the elements were complied. So if the court is saying that the crime against humanity of murder was committed, it is then telling you that these 2 also check. Right? The conduct was committed as part of a widespread or systematic attack directed against the civilian population. That's the definition of crime against humanity. So if the court found that murder as a crime against humanity was met, then check, right? Because it is a crime against humanity. So widespread or systematic attack is the definition of crime against humanity. And number 4, the perpetrator knew that the conduct was part of, or intended the conduct to be part of, a widespread or systematic attack. This one might be missing. We don't know, or we may the court might not, the PTC might not have enough information that Netanyahu and Gallant knew that the conduct was part of this crime against humanity. Or we don't know because the court doesn't tell us. The court just says that we could not determine that all the elements of the crime against humanity were met, right? It is either this one here, number 4, or this one, number 2. The conduct constituted or took place as part of a mass killing of members of a civilian population. So either the court is not convinced that there were enough people being killed by May 20th, the cutoff date, or they are not convinced that Netanyahu and Gallant knew that what they were doing was a crime against humanity. Now, the PTC, if you see here, this is the no, here. This is the ICC pretrial chamber decision on arrest warrants for Mohammed Deif, right? So the other arrest warrant. In this case, the court says, in light of the coordinated killings of members of civilians at several separate locations, the chamber also found that the conduct took place as part of mass killings of members of the civilian population, and it therefore concluded that there are reasonable grounds to believe that the crime against humanity of extermination was committed. So for this same pretrial chamber, the acts committed in October 7 are enough to count as mass killing. Right? Because this is what it's saying. They committed the crime against humanity of extermination because he participated in October 7th. Right? There are reasonable grounds for that. So we can presume that if October 7th matches the mass killing of members of the civilian population, then what Israel is doing also matches the mass killing of members of civilian population, because more civilians have died as a result of the actions of Netanyahu and Gallant than the actions of Hamas. Right? So with all of this, we're sort of doing legal archaeology here. With all of this, it seems to be the case that the pretrial chamber considers that all of these three were met. Right? The perpetrator killed one or more persons, including by inflicting conditions of life. Check. The court explicitly says so. Number one is check because the court told us. The conduct constituted or took place as part of a mass killing of civilians. Check, not because the court told us, but because the court told us that the amount of people that died on October 7th is enough to trigger mass killing. Therefore, the amount of people that have died as a result of Israel's retaliation against October 7th, which is in the tens of thousands, if not the hundreds of thousands, also must have been met. 3. The conduct was committed as part of a widespread or systematic attack directed against the civilian population. Yes, right, because the court tells us that this is what Israel is, what there's enough grounds to say is that Israel is committing murder as a crime against humanity. It's just not committing extermination as a crime against humanity. Right? So theoretically, this one is met. The one that might be the higher option for why, and remember, we don't know because we don't have the actual arrest warrants, is that whether they knew or not. Right? So the two candidates for, in my opinion, why is it that Netanyahu and Gallant are not responsible for the crime against humanity of extermination, instead the crime against humanity of murder, is most likely that they're not convinced that they knew, or less likely, in my opinion, that the chamber doesn't consider that what is going on in Gaza is sufficient mass killing, which I find difficult to believe. We don't know, and we won't know until we see the actual text of the arrest warrants, which are not public and will not be released until a very long time. So this is speculation. Okay, take that with a grain of salt. This is me trying to do archaeology of what happened in that decision to decide what happened, to speculate about what happened. And I speculate that what the court did is not all the elements are met. But the key thing here is that the court did say that number one is met. And number one, as I was telling you, is very similar to Article 2C of the Genocide Convention. So, again, take this with a grain of salt, because the standard of proof is different, right? The standard of proof for the elements of crimes at this stage of the ICC proceedings is reasonable grounds, which is not exactly the same standard that South Africa needs to meet in its genocide case. But if you are a South African lawyer and you need to show that Israel is committing genocide, now you're able to say that according to the pre-trial chamber of the ICC, pre-trial chamber 1, Israel did inflict on Palestinians conditions of life calculated to bring about their physical destruction. This is the connection between the ICC case and the ICJ case. The ICC case is telling you that the ICJ case makes more sense now. Chomnosky says it's rather forensics than archaeology. Well, depends, because I'm talking about archaeology in the Foucauldian sense, because I'm a critical scholar. So sorry about the the weird point. Um, so this is the connection between both cases, okay? At least for me. And I see that there's a lot of questions accumulating. I'll go right to them in a second, okay? But I did want to make this case clear, and I hope I'm making myself clear as to what is happening here. Okay, I hope that you guys are understanding what I'm trying to say with this. I'm not trying to say that South Africa has already won its case. I'm not. I'm not trying to say that there is no crime of extermination at all. No. In fact, the Office of the Prosecutor can submit more evidence to sustain their claim. So they know what the court says is lacking. So they can submit more evidence and then, get a finding. Finally get a finding. Right? So this is not the end of the battle on the crime against humanity of extermination. But what we have so far is that it seems to be the case that this is, even if frustrating because it did not find that Netanyahu and Gallant are reasonably guilty of exterminating Palestinians, it does add one more element of judgment, one more element of argument to South Africa at the ICJ. That's what I'm trying to tell you guys. Okay. Um, let's continue, shall we? Hold on. So, uh, so the chamber could not determine that all the elements of the crime against humanity of extermination were met. However, the chamber did find that there are reasonable grounds to believe that the crime against humanity of murder was committed in relation to these victims. What is the crime against humanity of murder? So, the court believes that the perpetrator killed one or more persons, right? That the conduct was committed as part of a widespread or systematic attack, and that the perpetrator knew that the conduct was part of or intended the conduct to be part of a widespread or systematic attack. So this is where it gets convoluted. Because remember that I told you that it seems to be that this is the one that was lacking for the court, right? Because of this archaeology that I'm doing. But then when the court says no, no, actually it's this one here, this one shares every single element except this one and this part here, conditions of life. So the crime against humanity of extermination is the crime against humanity of murder plus conditions of life plus mass killing. So if the court is telling you that it meets 1 to 3 elements, one to three for murder, then what is lacking is either conditions of life or mass killing. There's no other, right? It can't be conditions of life because the court expressly is telling us that that happened. So it needs to be then that the less reasonable one, remember I was telling you this is probably the less reasonable one. It needs to be that it's this one that is lacking. So for the PTC, apparently as of May 20th, there was not enough mass killing, which is crazy, right? Because if Dave there's reasonable grounds to believe that Dave committed this crime because of his participation in October 7th. How on earth is Israel not committing mass killing enough for this crime? I don't know. I don't understand. And I wish I had the order itself, the arrest warrants themselves, so that I could analyze it, but I don't. But when you read all of it together, it does seem like what the court is saying is look, there's not enough mass killing. So it is weird, right? So if I were a South African lawyer, I'd be actually relatively happy with this result. At the same time, it becomes confusing, right? With this, like, what do you mean that there's not enough mass killing, right? It's a weird thing. It's a very weird thing. We don't exactly know what the chamber reasoned here, but from this exercise in archaeology, the only thing that I can conclude is that it's requirement number 2 that is missing. So what the prosecutor needs to do now, and thanks AM22BBB for following, welcome. What the prosecutor needs to do now is to convince the court that yeah, there is mass killing. And it can do that. It can submit more evidence, and I mean, I would expect them to for that to be relatively easy because there is mass killing, right? So, but at this point, it's sort of a mystery. I'm not understanding what the court, what the chamber did here. Okay, let's finish this so I can answer your questions. Where were we? Here. In addition, by intentionally limiting or preventing medical supplies and medicine from getting into Gaza, in particular anesthetics and anesthesia machines, the two individuals are also responsible for inflicting great suffering by means of inhumane acts on persons in need of treatment. Doctors were forced to operate on wounded persons and carry out amputations, including on children without anesthetics, and or were forced to use inadequate and unsafe means to sedate patients, causing these persons extreme pain and suffering. This amounts to the crime against humanity of other inhumane acts. The crime against humanity of other inhumane acts is basically, let me put it here, other inhumane. Um, it's usually the let me put it around here. Oh no, hold on. I mean the here you go. Article 7, crimes against humanity includes murder, extermination, enslavement, deportation, forcible transfer, imprisonment, torture, rape, sexual slavery, persecution, enforced disappearance, apartheid, and other inhumane acts of a similar character intentionally causing great suffering or serious injury to body or to mental physical health. This is the catch-all term. Whatever is not included in A to J goes into other inhumane acts. And this is what the court is saying. What the court is saying that this is not exactly regulated by the Rome Statute, but it's bad enough to constitute its own crime of inhumane act. The chamber also found reasonable grounds to believe that the above-mentioned conduct deprived a significant portion of the civilian population in Gaza of their fundamental rights, including the rights to life and health, and that the population was targeted based on political and/or national grounds. This is also very important because, again, if you go to the definition of genocide, you need to prove that the attack was based on national, ethnic, or racial or religious grounds, right? You need to be targeting one of those groups. So again, if you're a South African lawyer reading this, you're happy. It therefore found that the crime against humanity of persecution was committed. Right? If we go to the crime against humanity of persecution, it says that the elements that need to be proven are the perpetrator severely deprived, contrary to international law, one or more persons of fundamental rights. In this case, the court says it's the right to life and health. Here, the perpetrator targeted such persons or persons by reason of the identity of a group or collectivity, or targeted the group or collectivity as such. So this is the court is saying that the group Palestinians were targeted as such. That's language that mirrors the as such in the Genocide Convention. Again, I'm not saying that this is a one-to-one. I'm not saying that South Africa doesn't need to work to prove its case. But if you're a South African lawyer, you're quite happy with this. 3. Such targeting was based on political, racial, national, ethnic, cultural, religious, gender as defined in Article 7, or other grounds that are universally recognizable as impermissible under international law. Again, you're very happy if you're South African right now. The conduct was committed in connection with any act referred to in Article 7, paragraph 1 of the statute of the crime within the jurisdiction of the court. So, Article 7, paragraph 1, murder, you know. 5, the conduct was committed as part of a widespread systematic attack, and the perpetrator knew that this was a systematic attack, right? So again, if you are a South African lawyer working on the genocide case, you're quite happy. World Wide Web Wide. Thank you for subscribing. I really appreciate that. So what else are we doing? What else are we talking about? Hold on. Let's go back to our opinion. Finally, the chamber assessed that there are reasonable grounds to believe that Mr. Netanyahu and Gallant bear criminal responsibility as civilian superiors for the war crime of intentionally directing attacks against the civilian population of Gaza. In this regard, the chamber found that the material provided by the prosecution only allowed it to make findings on 2 incidents that qualified as attacks that were intentionally directed against civilians. This is also very big. Reasonable grounds to believe exist that Mr. Netanyahu and Gallant, despite having measures available to them to prevent or repress the commissions of crimes or ensure the submittal of the matter to the competent authorities, failed to do so. So again, we now have reasonable grounds to believe that, at least in 2 incidents, Israel intentionally targeted civilians. We don't know which incidents these are because we don't have access to the arrest warrants themselves, and we won't for a while, right? But This is interesting stuff. If you are a South African lawyer right now, you're happy. That's I guess that's what I want to say. The most important thing to say right now is that if you're a South African lawyer, you're happy. Okay, let me see your questions. And if this has not been clear, because I know this is like a big crash course on international criminal law, um, do let me know. Joe Rutta, thanks for following. Let me see. Let me see your questions. We're at 99 average viewers. This is insane. Mm, okay, so there's the Austrian foreign minister. Um, so Marmsy says, "Am I being too hopeful if I think this could be a game changer?" It is a game changer. I think that's going to be the case. It is a game changer. Um, Changebox is right when he says it's a further acceleration of existing change. Box. Um, so Nina Blurb is flagged here with a comment saying that you're a possible ban evader, but like I'm gonna answer your question even still. It says, is it possible that the ICC didn't include extermination simply because it is about the two individuals, Netanyahu and Gallant, not the many other politicians, military, civil society, and not the state of Israel? No, because extermination is an individual crime. Um, Chief Steve shared the Discord group. Thanks for that, Discord. Discord. Thanks for that, Chief Steve. Um, just one person out there says, can countries ground Netanyahu's plane and arrest him if he would be in their airspace? Technically, yes. Mm, so the Hind Rajab Foundation, says Jartov, is asking the ICC to start on their list of like 1,000 IDF soldiers. So the problem is that the ICC generally goes onto those most responsible. The grunts, let's say, are reserved usually for domestic legislation, the domestic prosecution. Um, Let me see what other questions I have from you guys. Uh, So Solar the Fact says what makes this even more compelling is that the US cannot claim plausible deniability either, because by issuing a deadline to get their act in order, they explicitly acknowledged that it was happening. Yes, true. As far as I hopefully understand, the court didn't take into consideration the many genocidal statements made by other politicians. No, Nina Blurb, it did not, because genocide was not one of the crimes that the ICC prosecutor requested an arrest warrant for. So it didn't. Yeah. Um, Thais for Oli, first time chatting, so welcome. Says, do you think that part of where the decision says that Israel only delivered aid because they were pressured by the U.S. could play against the U.S. eventually, as in an acknowledgement that they knew what was happening and the power to stop it but didn't? Yeah, I think so. I think that will come to bite them in if there's any at any point any kind of like domestic prosecution, because I don't think that the United States will be subjected to like international scrutiny because it's not a member of anything basically. Um, so Jartov says ignorance of the law is not a defense of under the law. Why does the court care if they knew they were violating the convention? It's more to prove intent. uh, it's not the same if you are trying to commit a regular crime than if you're trying to commit a crime against humanity. So intent is it's not about knowledge of the law. It's more about intent. Um, Yeah, Erika Audris is first time chatting to say that to Jartov. Thanks, Erika Audris. Um, Jartov says intent to destroy the group. No, intent to commit the war crime, the crime against humanity. Uh, Iconoclast says, why would they not know when they're the ones giving the orders? No, I mean they know about the orders. It's just did they know that it was a crime against humanity? Um, so A199 Vit says, now that the warrants have already been issued, can some legal inquiry against Netanyahu and Gallant in Israel at national level be a reason to rescind the ICC arrest warrants? Or is it already too late to claim complementarity and nothing they can do nationally can change the warrants? This is procedural law, so I'm not entirely sure, so take my answer with a grain of salt, but I believe that if Israel starts legitimate proceedings against Netanyahu and Gallant, they would be able to claim that they can take care of it, but they will never do that. Mm, let me see what else. Biskowicz says, why do they not make the actual order public? Because it needs to be reserved so that there's less interference in the procedures. Um, Average water drinker says that the argument about the missing mass killing is really interesting. Yeah, it's the only thing that makes sense to me. I don't know. I again, guys, I don't have the final answers here. I'm doing legal archaeology. I'm speculating, right? So take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. But it's what makes sense to me at this point, just out of logic, right? Tromnomsky says the math ain't mathing. Yeah, I agree. Um, who else? I think I'm getting to the end of the questions. So, oh, Anas Basalama says, first time chatting, so welcome. Says that the Dutch Foreign Minister Caspar Veldkamp trip to Israel has been postponed. The ministry said on Thursday, confirming an earlier report by Dutch news agency ANP. That's interesting because the Netherlands has said that they will arrest Netanyahu if he visits. So I would not be surprised if Israel cancelled their um, you know their visit. Um, So Eduard Ma says, first time chatting, so welcome. Says, could you possibly provide some insights on the different evidentiary standards? Moreover, do today's arrest warrants influence the criticism that they took too long to be issued? I think they took too long to be issued because they were trying to make a very airtight case. So I don't fault them too much over that. I just get frustrated over it. But I know the pressures that were involved in all this. So like I guess it's better that they take long and do a good job than do it fast and then have a bunch of like Israeli politicians having arguments about, double standards or something like that. I think it is impossible for Israel to say that they've been treated to a double standard they will try, but I think it'll be impossible for them to successfully argue that this is a double standard. And as to evidentiary standards, look, I'm not a litigator in criminal law, but I'll tell you that it's basically um, um, that there's reasonable ground. Then there's at the time of confirmation of the hearing of confirmation of charges, you get substantial grounds, and then to convict you need what's it called, beyond reasonable doubt. And there's an in between which is balance of probabilities. So essentially, it's sort of like beyond reasonable doubt is there's no other way of interpreting things, right? There's no doubt in your mind that the person is guilty. Balance of probabilities is 51% chance or 50% plus one, right? It's higher chances that it happened than didn't happen. Um, Substantial and reasonable grounds are somewhat less, um, but still more than zero, right? So basically that. I'm not an expert on criminal law, so I don't want to go too much into detail about this. Magic of Carl says, Alonso, can you comment on the possible longer term repercussions of this and how countries like the USA and Germany can continue trying to evade it if they do at all? I know you answered this partially, but I just see a lot of concern from people saying, does this even matter if the USA continues to fund Israel's genocide? So I think, again, there's two answers for this, right? One is whether the US is going to be able to sustain the kind of division that this argument, that this order is going to have on the broader Western alliance, with like Spain, Ireland, the Netherlands saying, "Oh, we will abide by this ruling," and the U.S., probably Germany, probably the U.K. saying, "We won't." At a time when Trump is going to make these kinds of disagreements very difficult. So I am not sure that this kind of division is going to be worth the U.S.'s while. So it might be that they just, yeah, make a bit of a scene and then throw it under the rug for expediency's sake. Although with Trump, you never know. So that's one. And the second one is that, again, what I said in the beginning is I want us to frame this event in a longer arc of history, a longer effort by Palestinians to secure their liberation through international law. So I think we need to start the countdown for this in like 2010, when Palestine started going into the UN and saying, "Hey, I want to be a UN member." Um, and see how much we've accomplished in this time, um, and see these arrest warrants as Palestine's reward for its efforts. They are no longer fighting to be included in the international community. They are a part of the international community. The pretrial chamber has specifically said so, that they are a high contracting party of the Geneva Conventions, and that the people that are violating their rights and killing their population should be prosecuted. That is huge. So I guess in the short term, there's some hope, and in the long term, this is just like game changing. Um, Hime says, for practical effects, which is more important, these warrants, a UN ceasefire resolution, or the South African case? Or will the warrants somehow help positive outcomes on the other two? Um, so it depends, right? Because, I mean, a UN ceasefire resolution would not be complied with. So I'm not, I would guess it should be the most important, but it probably won't be, right? Because it won't be complied with. These warrants have a higher chance of being complied with, um, but Netanyahu and Gallant have ways to evade them. So I would say that the most important one would be the South African case. But as I was saying when I was reading the War Crime of Extermination, they will feed into each other. They will give arguments to each other. So I wouldn't do away any of them, basically. Um, Biskowicz says, so the warrant is to take them to trial at the ICC. Yes, it's to arrest them so that they can go into a hearing of confirmation of charges and then be prosecuted. Um, Erika Audrey says, do you think threats against the UN, ICJ, ICC judges, etc., had any impact on the delays on issuing these arrest warrants? Yes, absolutely. I do think so. I think they were. Um, I think they have been. They needed to be very careful when moving forward with this. So I'm sure that this was part of the discussion. So Fats maybe says, aside from saving face and countering the bias against Israel argument, what is the purpose of releasing the arrest warrants for Dave if he is basically confirmed dead? Actually, I'll let the court answer that. Where is it? The court, the chamber. Here, I think it's here. Yes. So So the court says the prosecution had initially filed applications for warrants of arrest for two other senior leaders of Hamas, namely Mr. Ismail Haniyeh and Mr. Yahya Sinwar. Following confirmation of their deaths, the chamber granted the withdrawal of the applications on 9 August 2024 and 25 October 2024, respectively. With respect to Mr. Deif, the prosecution indicated that it would continue to gather information with respect to his reported death. On 15 October 2024, the prosecution, referring to information from both Israeli and Palestinian authorities, notified the chamber that it is not in a position to determine whether Mr. Deif has been killed or remains alive. Therefore, the chamber issues the present warrant of arrest. The prosecution also noted that it continues to investigate the crimes in the ongoing conflict and envisions that further applications for warrants of arrest will be submitted. So what the court is saying is they don't really believe Israel when it says that, you know, um, the accused is dead, essentially. Um, So Edward MMA says, "Thank you for your answer. Is this a first step towards a universal fight for international justice? Although I am far from being an expert on TWAIL, I think one of their points is that international law generally, international criminal justice included, is a new way for Western powers to dominate the world. Are these arrest warrants a step in the other direction?" I think international law is a still continues to be a problematic body of laws because it is inherently colonial in nature. It is inherently racist, it's inherently colonial, imperial, etc. But I do think that all law, has a quality which is indeterminacy. And I happen to believe that indeterminacy in the case of international law is extreme, like it's radical indeterminacy. Indeterminacy means that there's no one single meaning for any particular legal utterance. So you can have a law that says that the sky is blue, and I can read it in a way that says that the sky is green. And there's a very common example on this. The US Constitution says that international law is the quote supreme law of the land. But if you go to the Supreme Court in the United States and how it's read and interpreted this supremacy clause in the U.S. Constitution, they have concluded that international law is not the supreme law of the land and that domestic legislation is more important than um, international law. So they've gone against the clear text of the treaty and they've made it radically indeterminate. So, because of this quality, because you can read international law in various ways, I think international law um, is still a powerful tool for liberation. Um, it can be used, it can be interpreted in different ways. Like decolonizing movements have done this in the past several times and have moved international law away from its like colonial roots and into readings that are more in line with human rights, with self-determination, with like let's say um, human rights ideas. So while I agree with the idea that international criminal justice is part of the problem, it's problematic, I don't think we ought to get rid of it or that there's no role for like strategic engagement with international law. I have not heard of the Battle Research Center, Fats maybe, so I will take a look. Um, Dear Kafka says, comparing to the situation with Putin and Mongolia, Mongolia not compliant is having any consequences or no? I don't think it is. I mean, they will be chastised and that's it. That's part of the problem, right? With like these the limitations of international law. Muhanusi says, why do you think the world's biggest powers are so pro-Israel? Could it be that they know something about the conflict and its history that the rest of us do not know, or are they just plain evil? I think there's historical reasons, right? I think there's reasons tied to imperialism. Um, so I think that's why. I think this is an expression of coloniality and Western empires siding with a Western colonial power. It's Orientalism at play, basically. Um, okay. So you guys sent me a statement by um, Justin Trudeau, so we can watch that and see what he says. Okay. This is Canadians for Justice and Peace in the Middle East. Let's see. Let me know if you can hear this. Okay.
For Prime Minister. Now that the ICC has issued warrants for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, Canadian law enforcement is obligated to arrest them should they come to Canada. Will you allow that to happen, or will you step in to prevent an arrest?
First of all, as Canada has always said, it's really important that everyone abide by international law. This is something we've been calling on from the beginning of the conflict. We are one of the founding members of the International Criminal Court and International Court of Justice. We stand up for international law, and we will abide by all the regulations and rulings of the international courts. This is just who we are as Canadians.
Now that the ICC has issued warrants for
I mean, that's what I can request of them, right? That's what I can ask of them. To I don't see a big argument here for um normative value for what the court has done. I think it's like the court has said we need to do this, so we will do it. Right? I think it's the bare minimum that you can do, right, to comply with that. So yeah, I mean it's the bare minimum that I can request these people do is to comply with a decision, even if they don't say anything normatively about this, even if they don't say this is a good arrest warrant, at least they're saying we will comply with this arrest warrant. Um, Hold on a second. Magic of Carl sent something. Oh, Owen Jones has. Let's see what Owen Jones says. So ICC arrest warrants. Oh, crap. No, thank you. I think you can see that, right, guys? Okay, I'm gonna try and make it a little bigger. Did that work? Let's see. Okay, I think you guys can see that. Okay. ICC arrest warrants must bring an end to Israel's atrocities and true accountability for all the guilty. Uh, Benjamin Netanyahu and his former foreign minister have been accused of heinous crimes. This must mark a turning point. I agree. I actually talked with him about this earlier, so I wonder if I'm in it. It is not just Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant who should fear for accountability for one of the gravest crimes of our age. If the International Criminal Court had not issued today's arrest warrants for the Israeli Prime Minister and his erstwhile defense minister, and indeed Hamas military leader Mohammed Deif, global legal order already widely regarded as with contempt by much of the world, would not have survived. I actually agree with this. This is actually a good point. Um, Michael Carl says, I'm cited in the end. Okay, cool. That's always nice to know. Um, yeah, we had a conversation about this earlier. Um, why? Because the scale of the alleged crime, because of the overwhelming body of evidence, not least that accumulated by Palestinian journalists, many of whom acted as the world's eyes and ears on the killing fields of Gaza before being killed by Israel, often alongside their families. Um, yeah, so I basically agree with this. Like, this is saying that, again, this is a turning point in international law, right? Some may consider the threat of arrest warrants to be far-fetched. Those charged would need to travel to a state that is a signatory to the ICC, which excludes, for example, the US, and Netanyahu may enjoy a level of immunity in foreign states because he is a head of government. But as Victor Katan, who's an excellent Palestinian lawyer, by the way, an assistant international law professor at Nottingham University, the now sacked Minister Gallant has no such immunity. Today's move is unprecedented, he tells me, because we have never had Israelis held accountable for anything they've done to Palestinians for the last 70 plus years, that the judges assessed the available evidence and decided there were reasonable grounds to issue an arrest warrant. He says, speaks to very serious crimes we know are likely to be taking place. Yada, yada, yada. This is very good. Like, I agree with all of this. um, where am I? Oh, here it is. But now is the time to give proper credit to the long-suffering people of Palestine. As the human rights scholar, yay, tells me, this is the denouement of a long process that the Palestinian leadership started in the early 2010s. See, I told you this earlier, praising their success in using international law to advance their liberation. As he also notes, today's decision could prove to be a sea change where the West's double standards and conditional commitment to international law will be put to the highest test at the hands of an emerging global South. Yeah, I agree with myself. Um, so yeah, I think this is a pretty good summary of the argument, right? The world is changing basically, is what they're saying. What Owen is saying, is what I'm saying. Has Barbog released a statement? I don't think she has, no. So Fats maybe says, not sure how familiar you are with domestic law. Not very, but let's see. But do federal governments have power over the capacity of cities and states who want to comply with the ICC arrest warrants? A politician from Michigan said he would comply, though I'm hesitant to believe that would be possible when national government is still so pro-Israel. I don't know if they can, because Michigan is not bound to comply with the ICC. So I guess a citizen's arrest maybe, but as a state, as a Michigan state, I don't know. That's weird. I don't think that they would be able to. I think that would lead to a crisis in the UK in the US. Um, So, average water drinker says one great aspect of the warrants is that now, if you are Netanyahu or Gallant, you have to be 100% sure you will not be arrested when traveling abroad, even if you issue such a statement. For example, Austria did. I'm sure you'd be afraid to test your luck. This greatly weakens Israel's diplomatic range. It does, and also you should bear in mind that the the police might not arrest you, but someone might sue you in court so that a judge orders your arrest. Right? That's Pinochet, right? That's what happened to Pinochet. So I actually I actually agree with this. Even if the state says we would not arrest them, that's not entirely up to them because checks and balances, right? That's up to the judiciary. So if you have proceedings in place in your state that allow you to request a judge issue an arrest warrant for these people, then you can do it. Magic of Carl says Elon Levy is having a meltdown on Twitter. Is he like live or something? Like, do you have a link? He clearly misplaced his pacifier. Um, the German Foreign Ministry Twitter account has been silent so far. Yeah, they would be. Um, no official statement from Starmer. He's just tweeting. Elon Levy mentioned they ruined. um, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what he's been up to lately. Let me see if I find something. Let me see if I can ruin your day. Um, oh, so he shared the Israeli foreign minister's reaction. Maybe we can look at that. Hold on. Yeah, okay, let's look at this. I think this is big enough. Hold on. I think a little bigger for you guys, right? Hold on. Yeah, that's better. I think you can read that. Okay, cool. So, Foreign Minister says a dark moment for the International Criminal quote unquote court. See, I don't understand why Israeli diplomacy does these things. Like, you guys are not teenagers. This is not a serious argument. Of course, it's a court. The quote unquote is just there. It's just for the consumption of a domestic audience that doesn't like international institutions, and everyone else in the entire world will look at this and go like, "Oh God." So I really don't get this. But anyway, a dark moment for the International Criminal Court (ICC) in The Hague, in which it lost all legitimacy for its existence and activity. Why? Can anyone point to me as to the argument of why this is losing legitimacy for the court and not for the West that supports the court contingently and strategically whenever it issues an arrest warrant against Putin, but not Netanyahu? Do you guys think that the rest of the world doesn't have eyes and cannot see what's going on and the double standard at play? Why would that be affecting the legitimacy of the court? To go against those with power doesn't remove legitimacy from you. Right? On the contrary, it makes you more legitimate. So I don't understand this argument. I saw Lindsey Graham say the same thing, something like that, something similar. Like this removes all legitimacy from the court. No, it doesn't. It gives it legitimacy. And if you go against a court that has increased legitimacy because of this, you are going against the entire promise of international criminal law. You're going against the legacy of Nuremberg. You're going against the World War II, the post World War II global order. You are weakening a world that we have carefully crafted based on principles like you cannot commit war crimes, you cannot commit crimes against humanity, you cannot commit genocide, you cannot attack other states just because. We have built a world that is very delicate. We take it for granted. But I mean, just the Ukraine Russia disaster that's going on right now shows you how easy it is for you to end up being invaded by another country and then fearing that they're going to nuke you. That, what stands in the way of that is the power and legitimacy of some words in some pieces of paper called the UN Charter and the Rome Statute. That's what it is. It's nothing else. So the idea that going against a court that is fighting against those with power is going to remove legitimacy from the court is not only stupid, it weakens the legitimacy of that entire world order. And we can lose it. So on the balance, you have, on the one hand, you can uphold international law, or you can blindly support Israel with a huge double standard against a court that is supposed to represent the basis of the post World War II order. And you would choose that? You would choose to destroy that order over what? Over Netanyahu? I don't understand. Um. Okay. Let me continue. It acted as a political tool. What part? We have just read the opinion. What part of it is political? It's all legal. It acted as a political tool in the service of the most extreme terrorists working to undermine peace, security, and stability in the Middle East. We will read in a second. We will read what the court said about Deif. How is the court acting in the service of terrorists when it is actually issuing arrest warrants on Deif? This so-called quote court issued absurd and unauthorized warrants. It doesn't need your authorization to issue them against Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and its former Defense Minister Gallant, despite Israel not being a member of the court. Israel is not a member of the court. The people you are killing in Palestine do live in a state that is a member of the court. Palestine is a member of the court, and you're killing people in Palestine. That's it. That's all you need. Like, this is the insane thing. Are they saying, therefore, that because Israel is not a member state of the ICC, then nothing that happened in October 7th can go to the ICC because it happened in Israeli territory? Is that really it? Because that's a very pro-Hamas argument, right? Like, why are you pro-Hamas? The foreign minister of Israel is making a pro-Hamas argument. Despite Israel not being a member of the court, these warrants are not merely personal attacks against them. In essence, they are an assault on Israel's right to defend itself. Israel does not have a right to defend itself in occupied territory. It has a right to protect its population. It has a right to police the territory it occupies for the protection of the population that it is occupying. It does not have a right to defend itself in occupied territory because it is the occupying power. This is an attack on the most threatened and targeted nation in the world. I mean, it is one of the best armed nations in the world. Okay, well, I'm going to move forward. Also, the only country in the region openly called for and acted against by other nations seeking its elimination. Palestine, its existence is questioned by him. A moral perspective. From a moral perspective, this represents a moral eclipse that turns good into evil and serves the forces of evil. So, going after crimes against humanity is now evil. From a political perspective, issuing warrants against a state that operates in accordance with international... It does not act in accordance with international law. No one thinks so. Maybe John Spencer thinks so, but no one else. Is a reward and encouragement for the axis of evil, which blatantly and consistently violates it. I mean, yeah, it does. Like, everyone agrees. Like, I don't understand this. Decent nations and every moral person in the world must unequivocally reject this injustice. veiled racism here, right? Because there's such a thing as an indecent nation. I wonder which nations are decent and which nations are indecent, right? I guess we can all make up our own minds about this. This is like really bad. Um, let's look at but let's look at this supposed terrorist court, right? The argument is that this court is a terrorist court that supports Hamas, right? So this is the Deif argument that they made. The arrest warrant for Deif. The chamber found reasonable grounds to believe that Mr. Deif, the highest commander of the military wing of Hamas at the time of the alleged conduct, is responsible for the crimes against humanity of murder, extermination, torture, and rape and other form of sexual violence, as well as the crime of murder, cruel treatment, torture, taking hostages, outrages upon personal dignity, and rape of and other forms of sexual violence. Like, compare this to Netanyahu and like Gallant. There's more crimes here. How is this court in line with terrorists? It's specifically saying that Hamas committed the crime against humanity of extermination and Israel did not, or Netanyahu and Gallant did not. The chamber found reasonable grounds to believe that Mr. Deif bears criminal responsibility for the aforementioned crimes for one, having committed the acts jointly and through others, and having ordered or induced the commission of crimes, or for his failure to exercise proper control of his forces under his effective command and control. So this is about October 7th, of course. So this is the supposed terrorist court, right? This is a supposed terrorist chamber. It says, with regards to the crimes, the chamber found reasonable grounds to believe that on 7th of October 2023, shortly after a large number of rockets triggered the Tseva Adom alarm in several communities in Israel around 6:30 a.m., armed men entered these communities, as well as the site of the Supernova Festival, a music event with a few thousand participants, 7th of October operation. Members of Hamas, notably fighters of the Al-Qassam brigades, carried out mass killings and at or around the communities of Kfar Asa, Holit, Nir Oz, Be'eri, and Nahal Oz, as well as the Supernova Festival. The attackers, for example, fired at people while they were seeking shelter and throw grenades at them. Hamas fighters followed similar patterns in other locations and killed further persons. These killings qualified as the crime against humanity and the war crime of murder. This is supposed to be a terrorist chamber, right? This was supposedly written by a terrorist supporter. The chamber also found that in some locations, namely the site of the Supernova Festival and in the vicinity thereof, attackers fired at people with semi-automatic weapons and or rockets-propelled grenades. In light of this, the chamber concludes that there are reasonable grounds to believe that the war crime of intentionally directing attacks against civilians was committed. In light of the coordinated killings of members of civilians at several separate locations, the chamber also found that the conduct took place as part of the mass killing of members of the civilian population, and it therefore concluded that there are reasonable grounds to believe that the crime against humanity of extermination was committed. Again, this is what the court said that Gallant and Netanyahu had not done: commit mass murder. And it is saying that Hamas did it on October the 7th, but according to the Ministry of Foreign Relations of Israel, this is anti-Semitic and anti-Israel because it is pro-terrorist. You can't make this stuff up. Like, it can't be this brazenly absurd. Bisco, which says they do not mention the Hannibal Direct. I don't know. I haven't finished reading this one before the start of the stream. So let's see. Furthermore, in the context of 7th of October operation, the chamber found that large numbers of persons were seized from various locations in Israel. The victims were civilians, including children and elderly people, as well as IDF members. After being taken to Gaza, most of them were detained in secret locations, including apartments and underground tunnels. A number of groups participated in seizing and detaining of these persons: the Al-Qassam Brigades, the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and other groups. The chamber found that Hamas was in control of the hostages as of the start of their detention in Gaza, and found that the hostage-taking was conducted with the aim to negotiate their release in exchange for Palestinian prisoners held in Israel. In light of the above, the chamber considers that there are reasonable grounds to believe that the war crime of hostage-taking was committed. The chamber further found that while they were held captive in Gaza, some hostages, predominantly women, were subjected to sexual and gender-based violence, including forced penetration, forced nudity, and humiliating and degrading treatment. This is, guys. I mean, I should have given a content warning when it said rape in the beginning. I'm sorry about that, but yeah, I mean, I'm gonna try to not like trigger anyone, so I'm gonna be careful when I read this. But this is not the wording of a chamber that is anti-Israel or like pro-Hamas, right? This is saying uh, there are reasonable grounds to believe that the crimes of torture as a crime against humanity and war crimes, rape, and other forms of sexual violence as a crime against humanity and war crimes, cruel treatment as a war crime, and outrages upon personal dignity as a war crime were committed. This is a very serious charge, right? And it matches like the arguments of the UN saying that there are grounds to believe that sexual violence took place in October the 7th, and it is being sanctioned and punished here. So or like sanctioned, finding reasonable grounds for it. So how is this court that it is agreeing with a lot of like pro-Israel accounts that are very disturbed by denials of sexual violence in October 7th? How is this chamber being accused of being pro-Hamas? I it is quite amazing to me how this is being completely ignored by the pro-Israel side, uh, as if it didn't exist. And I think it is important to read it. I think it's very important to read it and know what they said, because you will be told, "Oh, this is an anti-Semitic chamber. This is a an anti-Israel decision." Look at what they're saying about Hamas. Do you think that they hold Hamas in any esteem here? With respect to Dave's individual criminal responsibility, the chamber found reasonable grounds to believe that senior leaders of Hamas agreed to jointly carry out the 7th of October operation. The plan included targeting military and civilian objects in Israel and other acts of violence against Israeli persons. The material presented by the persecution indicated that several senior members of Palestinian Islamic Jihad joined the plan on the morning of October the 7th. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that's it. That's the opinion. So I don't understand how you can read that and say, "Oh, this is pro Hamas." I don't get it. Thais for Oli says, "I'm still confused about charging Dave with extermination, but not Netanyahu and Gallant. If Dave fills the knowledge criteria, how come the Israelis don't?" Well, I don't know what it was lacking. I don't know if it was the knowledge criteria or the mass killing criteria. Something is amiss here. We don't know how they interpret it. That's why please take what I'm saying with a grain of salt, because I haven't actually read the opinion. But yeah, it is confusing to me. I'm not sure I understand. Are they taking mass killing as mass killing in a single event? Or are they taking mass killing as the amount of victims? Maybe that's it. I don't know. Um, says Shartov says, "I wish Israel had let UN investigators investigate October the 7th, so there would be concrete evidence against Dave and Yeah, I agree. I agree. Um, like, I mean, I think that the proper reaction would have been that one, right? Like to prosecute these people. I mean, I don't. I'm really confused by Israel's reaction to this. No, Sobat Tolerance says Hamas welcomed the decision by the ICC to issue arrest warrants. Now, for the ultimate own and troll, Hamas should extradite Dave to The Hague. That would be something to behold. Um, Magic of Carl says the pro-Israel side is masterful at ignoring whatever isn't convenient for them. That has always been the case, so much so that it all started with October the 7th. Yeah, I mean that is true. I guess I shouldn't be surprised, but it is still amazing that that is the reaction, right? That they're calling uh, a chamber that is agreeing with a lot of the stuff that like they say should be condemned about October the 7th, and I agree that it should be condemned. And they're calling that chamber anti-Semitic and anti-Israel. Um, yeah, okay. Um, okay. Well, we've been doing this for a long time. Wow. Okay. We've been at this for over 2 hours, guys. So I think this is basically my summary of the Oh, there's still who's stealing my swag? Wait, who's stealing my swag? What is this? It's Nax. Oh, I recently met him. He's really cool. Nax Bilal. I recently met him. A thread of states that have said they will honor and welcome the ICC warrants. Yeah, some of you might know that like I like doing this. I like tracking reactions to these things. But I mean, on the contrary, I want more people to do this. So Nax is more than welcome to do this. I think it's great that he does. It really helps me actually. So not stealing my swag at all. um, so okay, so guys, we've been at this for a while now. So I think I've said everything that I could say about the warrants. And I'm gonna start wrapping things up around here. So if you have any like burning questions, ask them out. But I'm gonna stop the stream soon. Um, I did want to thank Rosova Tolerance, Jens, and Sauron for being so generous to the channel. Your gift subscriptions really, really do help me out. I really appreciate it. Um, it is very, very kind of you guys to do this. Um, we know a 69. Thanks for following. So hopefully, some of you that have come out to this space found it of value and you will stick around. We are trying to get the channel to grow, so we are trying to get the channel to get to a. I mean, I would love to have 61 viewers on average more often than I do. So if you can stick around, if you found value in this, we do this every week, twice a week. So do stick around. If you can subscribe, I'd really appreciate that. And yeah, hopefully you learned something today, and I certainly was challenged by your questions. I really appreciate your questions. I find this very enriching from a personal point of view. Um, Rosavatone says that you read my engagement with Dr. Cox on Twitter. If I read it correctly, the ICC seems to have a lower threshold for intent for genocide than ICJ. No, I don't think so. I think it's the same standard. Um, but anyway, thank you so much for being here and for taking time out of your week to spend it with me and talk about international law. We do this every Thursday at 6 and every Sunday at 6. Of course, it's not always about this. Um, but like usually it is related to Palestine at this point. Um, who said? Oh, Hassan's. Someone said that. Who was it? I lost. Average water drinker says, "I bet Hassan's stream is going to be great today." Yeah, I would love to see it, but I now I need to go eat. I'm usually around in either Hassan Abi's channel or on Jenna Leona's channel. So if you see me around, say hi. um, and yeah, hopefully we get to grow into a bigger channel soon. Thank you so much for being here. I was very happy to see our viewership grow today. Hopefully, you guys will stick around. I tweet Muhanusi. I stream at UK time, GMT. So I think that's like noon or 1 p.m. in the US. Anyway, thank you so much. I'm really thankful. I really appreciate it. Um, Hassan opened the stream listening to Falastina music and dancing. That's awesome. I'm probably gonna go watch while I cook, so I guess I'll see you there. Thank you so much for your time, for your subscriptions, and for your cheers. Um, oh yeah, join the Discord group, and I will see you. Oh, thanks for watching from Kenya. That's so awesome. Um, I will see you on Thursday, and I mean, follow me on Twitter and on Blue Sky. Thank you so much. I'm gonna end the stream now. I'll leave it on for a couple of seconds so you guys can finish your conversations. Thank you so much for trusting me with this. See you all around. Uh, Bye.